He is expelled for being weak, but his healing power is supreme. If you dig my recaps, don't forget to subscribe and smash that notification bell. In this world, 2 centuries have passed since a hero defeated the evil Jaryu and saved the world. In the present day, amidst a scene of destruction where it seems a carriage has been attacked by monsters, a young defenseless girl is left at the mercy of the attackers until a man steps in front of her to protect her. In the next scene, the series protagonist Lost is invited by a girl to form a group with her, leaving everyone at the Adventurers Guild of Mardat completely stunned. The healer happens to be holding a sign that says, "Looking for people to form a group," so Narcina shows off her skills right in front of him, making it clear that she means business. A bit embarrassed by this little spectacle, Lost introduces himself as a healer or something like that. Amherst, a guild employee, grabs the scatterbrained girl by the shoulders and asks if she has any idea that she's inviting Lost the Useless to her group. According to her, this guy is only capable of using basic healing and nothing more. An orphan from the labyrinth, he's been an adventurer since childhood, but has yet to develop his skills to a higher level, making him a complete incompetent. As if that weren't enough, one day, a group called Lightning Blades recruited him as a member, but he was soon kicked out. For these reasons and more, this sorry excuse for a healer is known as the most useless guy in Mardat. Assuming Narcina isn't wealthy, Amherst quickly warns her that she'll go broke if she depends on this guy. Speaking of which, Narcina pulls out a bag of money and reassures her that she'll be fine, causing the guild worker to push her against the wall, warning her not to flash that kind of cash in a place crawling with shady characters like the ones lurking in the corners of this dive. Innocent Narcina thanks the woman for the advice, and seeing that the girl is new to all of this, Amherst offers to find a group of beginners for her. But Narcina tells her she made up her mind a long time ago to form a group with that man over there. With that said, the young girl approaches Lost again, leaving the guild worker intrigued by her persistence. Either way, Amherst hands them the registration form for group members, and while Lost signs it, Narcina gazes at him in admiration, thinking she's finally found the person she's been looking for. When the boy passes her the form to write her name, she jumps in surprise, having been so lost in thought. Once that's settled, Amherst asks for the service fee, which is paid by the healer. With that done, Narcina enthusiastically announces that the group is officially formed and extends her hand to greet her new companion. Even though he doesn't quite understand the reason for her excitement, the boy shakes her hand politely. Without delay, the two head to the Mardat labyrinth, and along the way, Lost explains to his partner that no one has ever reached the end of it, so it's unknown what kind of boss might be lurking there. Many parts of the dungeon remain unexplored, leaving plenty of space for new adventures, making Mardat the largest city with a labyrinth in the region. Narcina asks if it's really a good idea for them to head straight into the dungeon, since the guild woman had suggested they go to the western field first. To this, Lost explains that several areas in Mardat have monster appearances due to the magical energy leaking from the labyrinth, like the mountainous region to the east, the northern forest, and the southern swamp. Lastly, there's the western field, where the creatures are indeed weaker, but the issue is that the area is so vast that finding them is difficult. On the other hand, the labyrinth is filled with creatures, and if they stick to the dungeon's early sections, the monsters will be weak and not pose much of a challenge. After their journey, the duo finally reaches the entrance to the labyrinth. Narcina takes the lead as any good martial artist should, leaving her healer in support. Lost is fine with this, but the truth is he isn't sure if this beginner can handle tanking the monsters in the dungeon. However, her ability becomes evident soon after, as she punches every monster that appears in front of her without mercy, even striking a victory pose with impressive flair. Faced with this, Lost admits she's not to be underestimated. As for the items dropped by the defeated monsters, the healer explains to the novice that they are magic stones which adventurers sell to the guild. The guild then uses the magic infused in the items to create various things. Since she's not very good with the theoretical side of being an adventurer, Narcina had no idea about this, even though it's basic knowledge for anyone pursuing this path. On the other hand, she's competent enough in practice to stay afloat in the field for now. By the way, she wants wants to know how much these magic stones are worth, and Lost tells her that the items dropped by goblins don't fetch much. If she wants to make more money, she'll need to defeat stronger monsters that drop pricier items. At least what they've collected so far is enough to cover tonight's lodging, so the group has to decide whether to keep going or return to the city. Arsina, of course, wants to venture deeper into the labyrinth, assuring him that she'll protect her healer no matter what. And so the duo resumes their adventure toward the deeper parts of the dungeon, where the martial artist narrowly avoids falling into a trap. Lost was ready to save her just in time, placing a stone on a block to trigger the trap, which opens a huge pit in the ground, revealing iron spikes at the bottom and several victims who had fallen. Startled, Arsina asks how he was able to spot the trap, and he explains that the block in question was darker than usual, leading him to suspect something. She thought trap detection was a thief's skill, but Lost simply says that after being an adventurer for so long, he's picked up a trick or two. Moving forward, the group encounters an orc mid-level demons that shouldn't be at this part of the labyrinth due to their immense strength, according to the healer. Arsina wonders if it would be better to flee, but Lost insists they can defeat the orc if they work together. Without hesitation, Arsina takes the lead against the fearsome adversary, who lets out a roar that shakes the dungeon walls. Still, the fighter holds her ground and charges at the enemy, landing a powerful spinning kick to its chest. In reality, it feels like kicking a concrete wall, but the intent counts. That aside, at least the orc is much slower than she is, allowing the martial artist to dodge its attacks. That is until the orc slams its club into the ground, sending shards of rock flying everywhere, one of which strikes Arsina's arm. Following that, the monster gains the upper hand and pins her against the wall, ready to deliver what seems to be the finishing blow. However, Lost steps in at the last second, defeating the orc with his own sword. Arsina watches the scene unfold as if her teammate were a true hero, saving her in the nick of time, which isn't far from the truth. Shocked, she asks if he's really just a healer. He plays the same card as before, explaining that he learned to fight after being an adventurer for quite some time. Putting that aside, he notices that Arsina's arm is injured from the shards and offers to heal it. Once that's done, they collect the magical stone left behind by the defeated orc, a much more valuable item than those dropped by the goblins. Even though they've already gathered quite a bit of wealth, Arsina wants to keep descending the labyrinth to face tougher challenges, and Lost doesn't object. By late afternoon, they return to the guild with a large haul of magical stones. Amherst can't believe they collected so many items just by venturing into the western field, especially with an orc stone among them. She accuses Lost of taking the rookie into the deeper levels of the labyrinth. Lost explains that the orc was at the labyrinth's entrance for reasons unknown to them, and the receptionist believes him since she's heard rumors that something strange is happening in the Mardat dungeon. However, being in a lower ranking position, she hasn't been informed of the details by her superiors. Setting the conversation aside, Amherst asks if they want to sell all the stones, and when Lost confirms, the receptionist beams with excitement and rushes to arrange their payment. Arsina doesn't understand why she's so happy, so Lost explains that guild employees earn a commission when adventurers under their management sell something to the guild. For this reason, Amherst makes it clear that the adventurers are doing her a huge favor, which is why she no longer seems upset that they disobeyed her order to head to the western field instead of the labyrinth. Since there's no use crying over spilled milk, the receptionist hands them their payment, a sum 10 times larger than what Lost was used to receiving on his previous expeditions. In other words, he's just realized that his old group, the Lightning Blades, had been cheating him all along. Arsina grumbles that the guild should ensure all group members receive their fair share for the work they've done, to which Amherst responds that they only mediate when the group pays the required fee. Lost decides to let it go as the Lightning Blades are in the past, and it's time for him to move on. With that, the team bids farewell to the guild employee, while a man upstairs named Handsome watches the healer as he leaves the establishment. A little later, while Amherst is gleefully counting her newly acquired coins as if she were a child receiving a birthday present, Handsome appears to scold her for placing Lost in a new group. She explains that she didn't recommend the healer to anyone. A girl named Arsina insisted on forming a group with him. Speaking of the protagonist, Lost takes his teammate to a tavern where they're warmly greeted by a young waitress who seems less than thrilled to see her friend accompanied by another girl. Afterward, he approaches Mary, the waitress's mother, to book a room, and the innkeeper asks if it'll be together or separate. Arsina feels a little anxious, but Lost doesn't hesitate to say they'll take separate rooms. Hearing this, the martial artist quietly admits to herself that she would have preferred sharing the room. Either way, they head to their respective quarters and wish each other a good night. As she lies in bed, Arsina recalls her childhood when her carriage overturned on the road and Lost healed her arm. That day, she decided to become an adventurer and form a group with the healer, ensuring he'd have nothing to worry about because she'd be there to protect him. Since that event, she trained hard to fulfill her promise and went straight to Mardat when she heard Lost had been kicked out of his group. But now that he's on her team, she's saddened that he doesn't seem to recognize her, as she's much different from the girl she was back then. Furthermore, even though Arsina trained rigorously, it doesn't seem like Lost really needs her help, as he's proven to be stronger than the rumors suggested. Either way, she's determined to keep her promise and remain in the group with the healer. After all, she doesn't understand why people call him useless when it's clear that Lost has real talent. The following day, amidst a swamp, a group of adventurers faced a seven-headed hydra, though two of its heads had already been severed. Margulis, the warrior clad in golden armor, stood at the front, though visibly uneasy. Armia, the sorceress beside him, was the most nervous of them all. The group's rogue Saberia was too injured to continue fighting, while Lost tended to her wounds. Although he didn't have a cure to rid her of the poison, he could restore her physical strength to help her fight it off. The rogue complained that the healer was useless, prompting the front-line warrior to order them to stop bickering and return to the fight if the healing was done. However, the healing wasn't complete, as Lost couldn't neutralize the poison. As he mentioned, they should have brought an antidote, but their leader had deemed it too expensive and chose not to buy one. Even so, he blamed Lost for being a worthless healer. At that moment, the Hydra struck again, targeting Margulis, who blocked the attack with his sword and shouted for Armia to cast a spell. Armia launched a fireball, but it barely scratched the beast. Frustrated with his allies, the warrior declared them all useless. Unwilling to face the mission alone, he decided to retreat, abandoning his companions. Armia followed Margulis, while Lost carried Saberia in his arms and also retreated. In the next scene, we are taken back to the moment when Margulis expelled Lost from the group Lightning Blades. Saberia accused the healer of being the reason they failed to defeat the Hydra, to which Lost argued that perhaps they were also to blame, given they were so excited that they stayed up all night and weren't at their best during the fight. Margulis asked if Lost was implying the fault lay with them, though that wasn't exactly what Lost had said. Saberia added that they should ask Armia whose fault it was. Feeling intimidated, the innocent sorceress glanced at the group leader and, pointing her finger at Lost, placed the blame on him. At that moment, Lost awoke from the dream, a bead of sweat on his forehead, realizing that if he was dreaming about it, it must have bothered him more than he thought. In fact, something similar had happened 6 years earlier. At that time, he was already known as Lost the Useless, but he still aspired to become a top-tier adventurer. It was during this period that another group reached out to him, but the truth was they didn't want a healer, they wanted live bait to distract the monsters. For a labyrinth orphan like Lost, this kind of treatment was all too common. What he didn't expect, however, was that the monsters would turn on the group that caused all the trouble and wipe them out. Upon leaving the dungeon, Lost was left traumatized, never having been acknowledged as a true adventurer. On that day, he came across an overturned carriage in the middle of the road surrounded by armed goblins. In the chaos, there was a defenseless girl, and the young man rushed to her aid without thinking. Even today, he doesn't quite understand why he made that impulsive decision. He just went. Maybe it was because the life of a labyrinth orphan didn't hold much value. But if he could trade his life to save that girl, then his death wouldn't be in vain. Perhaps that was what he was thinking. During the fight, however, he was struck on the head and knocked unconscious. Hours later, when night had fallen, he woke up beside the carriage girl along with knights of the order who had come to her rescue and finished the job. In other words, it wasn't Lost who saved her, the useless remained useless. Reflecting on this, the healer gave a brief accepting chuckle, but the girl who had been saved thanked him for his help, because without him the knights wouldn't have arrived in time. Embarrassed, Lost didn't know how to respond, so he healed a wound on the girl's arm. In his words, that was all he could do. do. He then shared the story of how he ended up there, explaining how his former companions had thrown him to the wolves. The girl was horrified by their cruelty and began to cry at the heartlessness of those people. It was at that moment she decided that when she grew up she would become an adventurer and promised to form a party with the healer. Despite this, after the girl's departure, Lost reflected that she was a noble's daughter and had no real chance of becoming an adventurer. Even though he didn't harbor any illusions about it, her words still encouraged him, and he resolved to become an adventurer once more. With that in mind, Lost began training hard and found a mentor to guide him, continuing as a healer but also developing a variety of other adventurous skills. As time passed, he encountered the members of the Lightning Blades and joined their group. Considering all this, it made sense that Lost would dream about that event. If he hadn't heard that young girl's words, perhaps he would have given up on being an adventurer for good, and he also wouldn't have met Narcina. Speaking of her, the woman knocked on the healer's door at that very moment, asking if he was still awake. When Lost opened the door, she invited him to have breakfast with her, and so the two set off together to share a meal. Later on, they returned to the dungeon and decided to venture deeper than they had last time. As they continued their journey, they eventually stumbled upon a teleportation circle. Lost explained that you don't find these in every labyrinth, so it seemed a mage had placed this one here shortly after the place was discovered, though not many details were known about it. Narcina wants to know if you can be transported to other places using something like this. Lost then explains that you would need another teleportation circle to exit, as it's only possible to enter through one and exit through another. Hearing this, Narcina thinks it would be much easier to build one in the city, but quickly realizes the city could end up filled with monsters if there was a circle that led directly there. The healer chuckles and points out that in reality monsters can't use this method. In any case, the knowledge required to create teleportation circles was lost hundreds of years ago, and although they are quite practical, there's no way to make new ones now. With that, the duo heads towards the teleportation circle and is taken to the other side. There, they find themselves in a reddish part of the dungeon, unlike the green hues that dominated the upper levels. Now they were in the intermediate levels, a deeper part of the dungeon where the challenges were tougher. For instance, when facing Lich's beings without a physical body, the inexperienced Narcina tries using her usual martial arts techniques but can't hit the target. Liches are spiritual beings made of pure energy, so physical attacks are ineffective. For that reason, Lost thinks it would be better to retreat, but Narcina is determined and assures him she can defeat this opponent. With that in mind, the two come up with a plan and put it into action. First, the healer distracts the Lich and makes it chase after him. Meanwhile, Lost reflects that with enough training, people can gain control over their prana, a spiritual energy residing within them. Well-trained martial artists are no exception. When their fists are enveloped in prana, their punches can destroy even spiritual beings. And so Narcina lands a punch using this technique and defeats the Lich. However, despite the victory, the fighter had been injured from her initial attempt to strike the spiritual entity. So Lost uses an item that boosts healing effects and casts a spell on her thanks to the magical stone embedded in the item, which amplifies the spell's power. The guild passes these stones to artisans who craft special items from them. Eventually, these items make their way back to the adventurers. After being healed, and speaking of magical stones, Narcina wonders how much they'll profit from the one they obtained by defeating the Lich. Back at the guild, Amherst is once again astounded by the number of stones the pair managed to collect and asks them to return as often as they can. As they leave the guild now at night, Lost remarks that he hadn't expected them to earn so much from those stones, and Narcina agrees it was a big surprise. Suddenly, a crowd forms up ahead where two guys are fighting over something. The duo approaches to see what's going on, and Lost notes that these kinds of disputes have become quite common as adventurers who got into trouble elsewhere have been flocking to this city. This reminds Narcina of something Amherst had mentioned. According to Lost, it's a huge inconvenience for adventurers and townspeople who follow the rules, but he decides to let it go, saying it's time to celebrate the money they earned today with a nice dinner. And indeed, the dinner is quite lavish. With the plates already on the table, Mary, the tavern owner, asks Lost if he has enough money to pay for it all, and he assures her that he does. On top of that, he wouldn't mind some beer. Narcina makes the same request, but Mary's daughter informs her that they don't serve alcohol to children. Narcina threatens to protest, but Lost agrees it's a bit too soon for his companion to be drinking beer, so they drop the subject. In the middle of the meal, Narcina asks about a strange building with no doors or windows, as there are several of them around the city, and she has no idea what they are. Lost admits he was curious about them too, and was surprised to find out that even the workers who built them didn't know what they were for nor who ordered their construction. The workers said the project came from an agent who represented another agent, and so on. Faced with this, Narcina comments that whoever commissioned these buildings clearly didn't want to be identified. But Lost doesn't mind as long as it's not harming anyone, though he would have preferred they built a wall around the city instead of these odd structures. Narcina agrees, as the city might be vulnerable, especially since it doesn't even have a moat. But at the same time, she likes being able to see far into the distance. Lost insists that this is bad in times of war, as it would be impossible to stop enemies from entering, but the girl isn't worried about invaders. Whatever shows up in Mardat, whether thieves or monsters, the adventurers of this city will be able to drive them out. Later, after returning home and saying their goodbyes, they each head to their rooms. Well, almost. Narcina briefly calls out to her companion to say something, but then changes her mind and pretends it was nothing. As she lies alone in her bed, she regrets not saying once again that she would have preferred to share a room with him. Meanwhile, Lost feels content to be part of a group again. Even though he believes he'll never meet that little girl again, he feels that thanks to Narcina, he'll be able to keep adventuring for a while longer. The next day, Margulis introduces the newest healer of the Lightning Blades named Lyra. She greets the rest of the group, but the other girls don't seem thrilled about the new member. Saberia won't even look at her, while Armia struggles to say anything at all. On the other hand, the leader is absolutely ecstatic, assuring everyone that now they'll be able to defeat the Hydra. Meanwhile, an old man sitting on a throne asks if the sleeping princess is in the city, and his subordinate informs him that she's joined a group with Lost. Short on time, the old man orders his subordinate to get rid of the useless healer. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to hit that like button. Your support helps motivate me to keep bringing you each episode. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.